manage sales inventory in real time on Android devices. Enjoy benefits like flexibility, user-friendliness, cost-effectiveness, multiple payment options, and enhanced customer experiences. For more information, contact us at 084 945 9349.
The Breakfast Rush, brought to you courtesy of the Willow Tin Group, at the forefront of innovation and one of the leading competitors in the South African FMCG market.
It's your Breakfast Rush. It's Monday morning, almost 7:15. The 16th of November 2024 marks the 164th anniversary of the first indentured laborers arriving in South Africa aboard the SS Truro in 1860. In the years that followed, aboard 384 ships, 152,184 souls were transported as human cargo between 1860 and 1911 to provide labor in growing the colonial economy through the development of sugarcane plantations and, of course, other parts of KwaZulu-Natal. Joining us this morning on the program, we're live on Facebook, live on YouTube, as well as your radio set around the country. The director at the 1860 Heritage Centre, Selvan Naidoo. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the Breakfast Rush on Radio Al Ansar.
Good morning, and wonderful to be able to chat to you on this important occasion.
Thank you for making time for us this morning. Tell us, what significance does the 164th anniversary of the arrival of indentured workers hold for the South African Indian community and the broader KwaZulu-Natal region?
30 years into our democracy, we're beginning to tell stories that weren't told prior to those 30 years of democracy. The story of indenture, one of the biggest stories to have not been told, is now finally being told, and commemorations are being underway for that 16th of November, which speaks to a wonderful journey of how it's moved and the internalization of a period of South African history has moved from a period of shame, embarrassment to commemoration. And it's very comforting that 30 years into our democracy, that we're able to come out in our numbers and acknowledge this part of history as a proud part of our South African history, where this story is now, firmly entrenched on the history pages of our schools, of our curricula, and so on, so that as a people, we can come out and acknowledge this contribution to the building of our nation.
Could you tell us more about the 1860 Heritage Centre and its role in preserving the legacy of the indentured workers in South Africa?
The 1860 Heritage Centre is an agency museum of the Department of Arts and Sports, Arts and Culture. It was rebranded from being called the Durban Cultural and Documentation Centre, and in 2017, we opened our doors to the public. We have a whole host of exhibitions that speaks to keeping memory alive, from the story of indenture to the role of women in the freedom struggle, to the Natal Indian Congress exhibition, Mandela Gandhi Luthuli exhibitions. So we have a plethora of exhibitions that speak to the new narrative, a revisionist brushstroke of where our history should be speaking to 30 years into our democracy. It plays a role beyond a static museum in having conversations, some of which need to be had in a South Africa that finds itself at odds in terms of building a democracy that we wish to aspire to. So the 1860 Heritage Centre is pivotal to the commemoration of indentured arrival of workers on the 16th of November. And we plan to have this. We have been hosting this commemoration over a number of years now at the South Beach, and we intend on continuing with this tradition.
Indeed.
And having more people join us.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that in a second. If you've just tuned into Radio Al Ansar, it's the Breakfast Rush. You're listening to a discussion now with the director at the 1860 Heritage Centre, Selvan Naidoo. Could you provide insight into the history of indentured labour system, the challenges faced by the 152,184 indentured workers who arrived between 1860 and 1911?
So in terms of its context, the arrival of these 152,000 workers, indentured workers, which was largely to be able to embolden a colonial capital project. It was situated in the matrix of labor, provision of that labor, once slavery was abolished, a new system of indenture, a new system of labor provision needed to be used to enhance the colonies of the British Empire and also other imperial empires, to ensure that labor is used to advance a colonial project. And located within that is the history of Indian indenture post-slavery. The conditions at which it was managed was truly horrific in the earlier years, very, very akin to slavery, where a number of people had passed on the journey from India to the various colonies. And similarly on the plantation, it really became something of enslavement, to the point of which that the abuse was horrendous, especially in the early years in Natal and Fiji, also in Natal with the high rate of suicide because of workers having no other alternative but to take their lives because of the abuse on the plantations. By the 1880s, the suicide was second to Paris as per million of people that were committing or taking away their lives. So the conditions were horrific, and there's no hiding from the brutalization of the system of indenture. And as it's moved over that time, so between 1860 and 1911, many workers had come to South Africa, ranking in the number of 152,000, who came on 384 ships. It was stopped in 1911 simply because of how brutal the system was. And the government of India decided that they will not be sending any workers to come out to the colony. So it really is a wonderful journey. And those people that arrived eventually have become South African citizens, contributing to the building of this great nation. And now their journey is being commemorated on the 16th, which is truly a phenomenal journey of where we've come as a people.
Absolutely. Speaking about the 16th, could you provide more detail about the commemoration ceremony scheduled for November 16th at the Durban South Beach?
So it's wonderful that so many commemorations are taking place. I just want to alert listeners to the fact that there's a whole host of commemorations. So please go out in numbers and support all community initiatives regarding the commemoration. As far as the 1860 Heritage Center is concerned, we begin our commemorations on the 15th. We have an 1860 memorial lecture that's delivered at the 1860 Heritage Center, situated at 1 Derby Street in Central Town. And that's delivered by Professor Vinay Lal, and a very interesting title, The Figure of the Migrant. I think particularly where the world is today, that topic has resonance. On the 16th itself, which is the Saturday, we arrive through a series of prayer. And before we actually arrive at the beach, we have prayers being conducted at various sites of memory. We will arrive at the 1860 Heritage Center at 7 o'clock, proceeding then to the Methodist Church out in Lawn Street, which is Ismail Mir Yusuf Daru Corner, and then arrive at the Bacha Pir Mausoleum, where we pay respect to the only person whose tomb, and Basha Pir was one of the passengers on board the Truro. So it's important that we go to that site of memory, pray, and then arrive at the Durban Hindu Temple in Somsia Road to pray. That's all before 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, we arrive at the Durban South Beach next to Ushaka Marine parking lot, where we will be joined by the Premier, KwaZulu-Natal Premier, Honorable Tamin Tuli, and various other speakers to be able to commemorate this. Our commemoration is a very simple one, in offering a simple marigold to the Indian Ocean waters in tribute of those people that arrived between 1860 and 1911.
So we, as the Breakfast Show, will be continuing this conversation for the better part of this week, and I want to thank you for your involvement in setting the tone, the pace for the conversation for the week as well. I wish you and your team success in your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing all your listeners and yourselves at the commemorations.
Indeed. That was the director of the 1860 Heritage Centre here in Durban, Mr. Selvan Naidoo, just setting the tone, the pace, if you will, for a conversation that's going to be taking place over this week here on Radio Al Ansar. And I would like to think that it's not only the breakfast show that will be having this conversation, it's going to be other shows as well, leading into bigger conversations. Back on that day, 164 years ago, on the 16th of November 2024, that ship docked here in Durban, in South Africa, and people who were, to a large extent, on that ship, not knowing what the world had for them, what life had in store for them, where they were going, what the climate was like, what the people were like, what the food was going to be. Nothing. They didn't know anything. And they arrived here as, and I'm going to say it this way, slaves.
That's the correct term.
The technical term is indentured laborers. They arrived here as indentured laborers, and they were separated into groups, right? You go work there, you go work there, you go live there, you go live there, and you do this and you do this. And this is what's going to happen for the next X amount of years.
That's regardless of the weather conditions.
Anything.
Regardless of the hail, of the sunshine. You needed to do what you were asked to do.
Yeah. Take your little sickle, get onto the field, and cut the sugar cane. That was the mandate of those folks way back in the day. Among other things, obviously, there were people working inside the boss's house making his tea because his wife was incapable. I'm going to assume. I'm making an assumption. I'm sorry. But we'll be talking about this as the week goes on, because there's a lot of people, 164 years later, think that Indians in South Africa, every single one of them, came here aboard a 5-star MSC cruise, having a party every evening, dinner with the captain every evening, whatever the case may be, came here, opened up a shop in a corner, and became millionaires overnight. That's the assumption.
Caviar on the balcony.
I still wouldn't need that.
Me too.
So we want to just take that idea, knock it for a 6, and put the actuality on the table.
And it reminds us, people like myself, that sit here, what the people before us experienced, what they endured. We're sitting here 164 years later.
There was hardship.
With so much to be thankful for that we didn't even know.
When people talk of forefathers, not that four, no, F-O-R-E, fathers, they talk about people that made sacrifices, got here, and started a life.
Absolutely.
That ripple effect, the life that you enjoy